Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Film vs. Analytics on FantasyPoints.com. I am your host, Brett Whitefield. I am the COO and Director of Fantasy Points Data, and I am the film expert today. I'm going to be joined by my co-host, Scott Barrett, who is the CEO of FantasyPoints.com. He is the analytics expert, and the goal of the show is to go player by player in this year's rookie class. We're hitting the ADP for rookie draft, and we are going to debate film versus analytics. Without further ado, let's dive right in. Scott, my man, what's good, brother?
Yeah, happy to be back. I missed you.
Yes, I love this series. We're going player by player. We've already done a couple of the hot names, Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. Today, we're going to be talking about Jayden Daniels. And I know you're going to tell everyone that analytics don't matter a ton for Jayden Daniels, but you being the tremendous analytics guy that you are, I'm sure you have some really cool, interesting stats prepared for us that are analytically driven. That maybe some things that Jane Daniels does that drives you insane.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. As I discussed with Caleb Williams, I'm not really going to be much help with quarterbacks. I've tried to build a quarterback prospect model before, like I have with other positions, but I've always abandoned it just because it's never anywhere near as predictive. But if I were to build a quarterback model, the key stats would be sack avoidance, accuracy, rushing production, draft capital. Daniels certainly checks the draft capital box, projected to go top 3 in the draft. In terms of rushing production, he looks elite. He averaged 104.2 rushing yards per game in 2023. Only one other Power 5 quarterback drafted day 1 or day 2 ever had more in a single season. That was Lamar Jackson. Jayden Daniels averaged 40 fantasy points per game in 2023. I know fantasy points doesn't seem like a predictive stat, but it is for the game of fantasy. That ranks second best since 2016 on a top 7 list with Lamar, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray. That's a stacked list. All of his passing stats look insane. Maybe you've seen the graphic on Twitter comparing his numbers when he won the Heisman to Joe Burrow when he won it. I assume Daniels just had like way more dropbacks, or there was something fluky or fraudulent there. Nope, he just had an insane season. This is all the good news. For red flags, we can talk about how old he is. We can talk about how he didn't cross 3,000 passing yards or 17 passing touchdowns until his 5th season. How he also benefited from high end receiver talent: Brandon Ayuk, Ricky Pearsall, Rashad White, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr. All of these are minor points to me. Here's the big one: pressure to sack ratio is really one of the best, most predictive, stickiest stats when projecting college quarterbacks to the next level. And it's also one of the most underrated stats at the NFL level. He has a 24.5% career pressure to sack ratio, one of the worst of any projected day 1 or day 2 quarterbacks since 2014, behind only Hendon Hooker, Sam Howell, Will Levis, Desmond Ritter, barely ahead of Justin Fields and Zach Wilson. On top of that, he has the highest career scramble rate on non-pressured dropbacks or when in the pocket for longer than 2.5 seconds. So the question there is, why is he so quick to bail on clean pockets with a great receiving core? That worries me, and as he heads into the next level. And then, of course, like the counter argument, especially for fantasy, is like, well, he was an elite scrambler. I think he had the most scramble yards per carry and the most scramble yards per game of any quarterback in any season since 2014. And so ultimately, to put a pin in this, it reminds me of Justin Fields when he was coming out. Like, I'm going to love him for redraft, but I have these concerns long term. And so, like, I don't know how long he starts in the NFL. I'm going to leave that up to draft capital or for you to tell me. But I do know that in any game he does start, he's probably an easy mid range QB1 for fantasy just because of his rushing upside, which is such a cheat code. And that gives him a major edge over quarterbacks like Drake May and JJ McCarthy, where the downside is like Justin Fields was just traded for peanuts, but he was behind only Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts in fantasy points per game the past year and a half when he was starting. And, maybe Jayden Daniels is even better than that because his numbers are so insane. So that's where I'm leaving off. And you can tell me how far off I am with that comp.
Well, so before I dive into my bit, Scott, I want to dialogue a little bit here. I do think we're going to see Jayden Daniels very similarly, actually. Like your red flags and my red flags pretty much align right on. The pressure to sack stuff is ridiculous. The constant bailing from a clean pocket is crazy, right? So when I dive into Jayden Daniels tape, the thing I keep coming back to with the bailing from a clean pocket is like how much of that is just because he knows he's a bad dude running the football? You know, like if you have that ace in the hole, I mean, this is better than Justin Fields, by the way. This is his running ability. Justin Fields was not a very good runner in college, actually. Jayden Daniels had more rushing yards this year than Justin Fields did his entire college career. So, I mean, this is like I think Fields' best year running the ball was like 400 or something. Jayden Daniels had like near 1,200 yards this year. So I think he's a Lamar Jackson level runner of the football. And I think this is great. You can design an offense through him. So to answer some of your questions, Scott, like, yeah, I don't know what to do with the pressure to sack stuff. I don't know what to do with that. That's a really damning thing for me. It's tough. But when I look at the pros of what Jane Daniels does, I start to feel a lot better about him. And he's another one of these really toolsy prospects that has a lot of warts. But let's talk about those pros. Elite accuracy, repeatable mechanics. His release is consistent. He can throw from multiple platforms, multiple arm angles, and especially when we're talking downfield passing. I can't remember a quarterback coming out in the last 9 years that hit as many go balls in stride as Jayden Daniels did, 50 plus yards downfield. I mean, it was every game he's hitting multiple throws of this variety, 50 plus yards downfield, hitting Malik Neighbors right in stride, hitting Brian Thomas Jr. in stride with, they're not having to make adjustments on the football. They don't even need body control or anything like that. They're just tracking the ball, catching it in stride and scoring. That's elite stuff there. I mean, that's really, really good arm talent. He doesn't have the strongest arm in the world, but his ability to stand in the pocket and throw with rhythm and timing, a little bit of anticipation. You don't see a ton of it, but you see some. It's all incredible. We talked about the running ability. I think this is a guy you can design your entire offense around. If he gets with a modern offensive coordinator that can take that game, build in the QB run stuff, that's all gravy, right? He should be 1,000-yard runner in the NFL. Everything you've seen with Lamar Jackson early in his career, like Jayden Daniels is far along in the QBing process than Lamar Jackson was when he was coming out. Part of that is his age, right? And a lot of people use that age against him. I Obviously it's a concern. He's 24 years old or whatever. He's going to be a 25-year-old rookie at some point, I believe. I kind of like it is concerning, but I take an alternative angle there and I say this is this is a proof of concept for him as far as development goes. Like when he finished his age 21 season, no one on planet Earth thought this guy was a first round pick, let alone a top 10 pick, right? But he kept getting better, kept getting better. Every year he got just a little bit better. Even in 2023, Scott, he got a lot better. From game one to the end of the season, Jayden Daniels got a lot better in the inside of the 2023 season. So that proof of concept from a development standpoint, I'm hugely attracted to that. I think that's great. I think some of the things he struggles with, bailing from a clean pocket, he doesn't really he doesn't really run to throw the football. So when he scrambles and escapes the pocket, he's not looking to throw the ball downfield. He's not keeping his eyes downfield. He's just running the football. I think he'll continue to develop at the next level, hopefully, get with the right coach who can speed up his process a little bit. Um, though that's all great. So I actually like the age thing. I think that's a really nice proof of concept there. Some of the other concerns I have, Scott, he doesn't attack the middle of the field very well, or at least didn't until the end of 2023. And you invoked the name Justin Fields, so we got to bring it up, right? This is Justin Fields all over again in some ways, where Fields just doesn't really get through his progressions well, and he can't throw accurate footballs in time over the middle of the field. I worry about that with Daniels. Now, he did start to do it at the end of last year. The last 5 games, I think starting in the Mississippi State game, you saw him hit a couple in breakers over the middle in crucial moments. He hit a seam ball or two in crucial moments. Overall, though, I think that is something he's really going to have to work on developing, continuing with that trend I just talked about. Then the last thing for me, Scott, is his size. Like, I know we've all been like BMI Nazis the last 5 years, starting with Devontae Smith, but for quarterbacks, I think it's hugely important, right? This guy is 6'4" and like 190 pounds. I mean, that's kind of scary, right? Especially for a guy who's going to run the ball as much as he is. Can he take hits? And we see on tape, he takes a lot of unnecessary hits. He doesn't do a great job getting down, doesn't do a good job of getting out of bounds. setting up, pursuit angles so he doesn't take the full force of a linebacker bearing down on him. Things that like, Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson are excellent at. Jayden Daniels hasn't quite figured that part out yet about being a run first quarterback. So
Yeah, so I don't think I disagree with any of that. I think that makes a lot of sense. The question I'd pose back to you though is, are you prepared to take him with the 103 pick? Do you feel good about that?
so in the context of fantasy football, you said it with like Justin Fields, like even as bad as he's been, and a guy who just got traded in the NFL for a 6th round pick, he's still been an absolute fantasy stud. So I think you have to. Like I think it's a no-brainer for me to sit there and take like we talked earlier with the Caleb Williams stuff. Like if you're at 101 and you can trade back to 1-3, pick up an extra few picks and get Jayden Daniels, that's a slam dunk to me. You're going to get a guy, like I said, he should be 1,000-yard runner at some point in his career. The only concern really from a fantasy standpoint is maybe he only starts 3 seasons with his first team. If he doesn't reach the ceiling, if he doesn't continue to get better, if say the bottom falls out, he might only start 3 seasons in the NFL for his original team that drafts him. That's really the only concern from a fantasy standpoint. But I think you take him 103, you're going to get top 10 QB production out the gate for at least the next 3 years.
Yeah, I think even when you look at Caleb Williams, who's going to be throwing to DJ Moore and Keenan Allen,
Allegedly.
and that's a great supporting cast. And let's say Jayden Daniels goes to the Patriots, which is not a great supporting cast. I do not care. I think on a per start basis, Jayden Daniels should have by far the higher per game expectation. And, over however many games he does start. And sure, that's a question mark, but I mean, players drafted top 3 seem to be getting second and third and fourth chances. So to me, he's a value. To me, I think this is a great pick. I think in redraft, he's a player I'm going to be all over.
Yes.
And at the 103, that seems like good value. And in startup drafts, he's the QB 12. That seems like really good value. So yeah, I'm super in on this. I don't see much downside because again, he's going to be a star mid-range QB1, even if he's not good at
Right.
real football, which is exactly the case with Justin Fields.
You'll see I have Jayden Daniels as, in that QB2, QB3 range in the class. I think the pros are enough for me to look past some of those warts for especially if I'm an NFL team and sitting in that GM chair. I'm just looking at all the good things he does, and it does outweigh the bad by a pretty significant margin, similar to how it does with Caleb Williams, and we'll get into Drake May later. All these guys have a lot of warts, and I think the pros ultimately outweigh the cons. So I'm sticking with him as my QB 2 or 3 right now. He's in that mix. I got to finalize the board, Scott, but he's not going to be lower than QB 3. I'll promise you that. So
Yeah, and remember, yours is an NFL board. Mine is
yeah,
a fantasy board. So don't be shocked if Jaden Daniels winds up as my QB1. Probably won't. We'll probably cave to draft capital, but don't be surprised.
and for what it's worth, too, to your point, Scott, Caleb Williams is going to have a much more sustainable environment if he does indeed go to number 1 overall to the Chicago Bears. We talked about it on his show, but Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift, Cole Kmet, pretty well put together offensive line, much more sustainable environment for him to develop and grow and be good. So I don't see a problem with that.
He's my rookie redraft QB1 for sure, though.
Yeah,
No
I
contest.
like that. The Konami code, as you've taught me, is strong with Jayden Daniels.
That's right. What about a comp, Brett? You have a
Oh yeah,
stylistic comp?
yeah, I do. And when I throw this out there, people are going to be like, "Eh, I don't like that." But you got to think about rookie season, second season, RG3 coming out of Baylor. This was a dude who was awesome. I mean, especially for fantasy, right? Like he was legitimately awesome, exceptional run of the football. His downfield accuracy was awesome. He did the same exact things well that Jayden Daniels does well. He just unfortunately injuries got a hold of him, and he never continued to develop. And I don't know why that is. Hopefully, Jayden Daniels isn't subject to the same fate. But RG3 to me is the comp I can't unsee when I watch him.
Yeah, I don't hate that. That was one of the best rookie quarterback seasons in fantasy history. So, yeah, if he has a season like that, I think people drafting him here would be ecstatic with that.
Yeah, and as you know, from watching Lamar over the years and Fields recently, the NFL is also more ready for that type of QB than they were when RG3 was drafted.
Love it.
Awesome. We'll be back with another episode. Who's the next guy? Who's ADP number 4, Scott?
I think it's Drake May. I have to check though.
Drake
One
May.
sec.
All right. So we'll be back with some Drake May,
No, I
some
don't
Malik
know that. Don't
Neighbors,
quote me on that.
some Rome Adunes. We're doing them all. We're going one by one, ADP all the way from now until the draft.